what should investor consider when looking to invest in properties in state different from theirs? We talk about the weather, insurance, anything else they should look at? Because you mentioned those
So
specific
definitely
things.
is a landlord-friendly state. We talked about that. The taxes in that state, what the tax structure, everybody's tax struck property. When I say talk taxes, property taxes, insurance. What does that look like within that state? Another thing to consider if you want to have boots on the ground in another state. Like I can't speak to that highly enough. When I started, the first two homes I bought in Arizona, second two homes I bought in Louisiana. Louisiana is very much so a cash flow state. It's not, you don't have like crazy wild appreciation swings where like you have in Arizona. Arizona is very good appreciation. You kind of get a good mix of cash flow and appreciation in Arizona. In Louisiana, it's very steady. You're not seeing homes grow at large percentages from an appreciation standpoint, but the cash flow, properties cash flow well because you have low price points. So that's good sometimes for people who are like, hey, I don't have enough money to buy in my own state. Like if you're in California or New York, I want to go to a state where I can afford to purchase that home for payment. But you want to make sure you have boots on the ground because contractors will absolutely take advantage of you if you're doing up or you're fixing up properties.
Are you ready for the
Welcome back. We are here in the studio with Miss Tari Thomas. She's going to teach us about real estate today. I am so excited. We met through the FinCon community, and those who don't know what that is, that's for a community for the money nerds, as they say, right? The money nerds, essentially. But I am so happy to have you here on Island Money 365. So welcome to the studio. Woo! I know, right? So tell me, let's talk about you. Tell me a little bit about yourself, Tari. Let them know.
So it's funny, because so shout out to Jamaican heritage, first generation. I'm from the East Coast. I live in Arizona, but I came out here really. I got a business degree, started down that track, but jumped into real estate really early on because Arizona was such a young city when I jumped into it. And I'd been doing real estate for the past 20 years. Started like right out of college, a couple years out of college. And over the last few years have transitioned from single family to multifamily. I've fixed and flips, renting out rooms. I mean, you name it, I've probably dabbled in it a little bit. Now to syndicating multifamily, and that really is just group investing for people to take down large commercial assets. And so I started a community called the Passive Investment Flight Club, where we are committed to really collaborating our collective capital, understanding the power of our capital collectively to take down commercial assets to really disrupt our generational wealth path. So that's something that I've been doing, been really passionate about that over the last couple of years. We've been taking down large commercial assets, but there's so much down this journey that has led me down this, you can never see, you try to envision what 10 years from now looks like, but God takes you down certain pathways that lead you to spaces greater than what you thought was possible. So I'm blessed to be in this space and so excited to just dig deep with you.
Yeah, I'm excited. Like, okay. So what was that first of all, I should full disclosure, as I told you before, I'm dabbling into real estate, right? I want to. I haven't dabbled in besides my own home. Right. I haven't done anything yet, right? And when I was going to buy my first home, my only home, my first you should buy investment property, rent out, the rest, and you live on the first floor or whatever, so you can get income. But for me, I didn't want that. And the reason why I didn't want that at that point in my life, and I don't regret it at all, Tari, is because when I migrated here, I've been living in apartment buildings all my life since 10 to age 25, and I miss my backyard. in Jamaica, Mystic Green. So I just wanted a space that's mine. I'm always so mindful of my neighbors because I live in apartment buildings, you know? So I'm like, I just want my own space. I want my own backyard to run around. I want to have to be quiet my music for my neighbors. I just want to be free. So I was feeling a lack that I had when I bought my home. Now I'm like, okay, I want to buy investment property. And they're like, see, if you just done that from the beginning. I'm like, okay, not you, blocking you out, blocking you out, you know? But like when you bought that first investment property, or what did it make you think, you know, let me buy this? What did you see that you were not taught, or what was clicking inside of you when you're thinking about this thing?
Yeah, man, I was in my young 20s, so I think I bought my first house at 24, and I just didn't want to pay rent anymore. Like rent was equal to what you could pay for a house at the time, and I was like, why am I paying rent when I could be paying mortgage and actually owning something? And so that kind of was my thought process. My mom really taught us to live below our means, so she was big and she gave us money for the things that mattered. I put it like that. So growing up, I thought I was poor, but I really wasn't poor. You know, my mom paid for us to do the ballet and the tap and the, you know, all of the things, piano. But when it came to like, oh, you know, mom, I want a new pair of shoes, she was kind of like, do you really need a new pair of shoes? So she was frugal to say the least, but she spent the money on the right things, you know, that to give us opportunity and things like that. And so when I got to Arizona, you know, I was just like, okay, how can I make the most of, you know, this situation, right, where housing is actually something I could afford with the rent money that I'm spending. And so I went to the hood of Mesa, Arizona, just to stack up some cash. Did an FHA, put as little amount down as possible, and voila, I got into my first house, and I had about 10K in equity already, and I was like, wow. At the time that my house was like $130,000, so it was like a $3,500 down payment, and I'm like, wow, look at that multiplication. And I was like, oh man, if I just had my credit right. And you know, you always think about what if, you know. And I was like, okay, well, I'm going to continue to work on my credit, and we're just going to do this every 2 years. I just jumped right in. I was at the time we didn't have YouTube, we didn't have all those things. You know, you had to actually buy programs. They actually mailed it to you. You had to read it. And so I had thought about the process that I wanted to use was buy a house buy a house every 2 years, live in it for 2 years, right? So you can avoid capital gains, rent it for 3 years, and sell it in 5, right? So if you follow those rules, you avoid the capital gains that you would get hit because you lived in it at some point in two of the last 5 years. And so that was kind of my strategy. So I started buying houses every 2 years, living in it, renting it out. And then crisis, the Great Recession happened of 2007, 8 time, kind of put a little roadblock. And the reality is, you know, with real estate, you can't time when things are going to happen. Like we always want to map out for the best case scenario, but the reality is when you do invest in real estate, anything can happen, right? Just like the stock market is going bananas today, you know, you should always just be looking for opportunities and then making sure that you're managing the risk along the way. And so that's how I got started. And then, you know, took a little break, the Great Recession. I was able to weather that space, right? So at that point, I had about 5 properties under management. There were some crazy things that were happening in my life at the time. This was just life, not really related to the Great Recession. But thank God for the cash flow that I had and that I was making on those properties because I was able to weather it. So even though the appreciation in my properties was, I mean, it spiked, right, to as much as I think I had 300,000 or so in equity across those properties, and then it within 4 years, and then it crashed, right? And so cash flow is what saved me. And so I think people sometimes think, oh, if I buy a house, I'm just going to be this real estate investor. But just because you buy a house doesn't mean you make money at it. And so some people think, oh, they just get caught up in the spirit of like, I'm an investor. Yeah. And then they buy the wrong way. So I always encourage people to buy right. Obviously manage your risk. You need to be doing the analysis to make sure that the rents in the area, not your income, that the rents in the area is always enough to cover all of your operating expenses and your debt, right? So if you do that, and a lot of people, they do high level, oh, okay, yeah, my mortgage, my principal interest is this. Yeah, it covers it. No, do the proper analysis, right? Look at even just your maintenance expenses that you would have for that particular home, depending on if it's a new build or if it's, an older home. Just be making those calculations. I see people making those mistakes still to this day, even with the Great Recession happening. They qualified based upon their income, they bought it, they never did that analysis. And if you're working with a regular real estate agent that doesn't really understand how to do those numbers, they're just going to say, yeah, well, this is a great price for this neighborhood, but it's not necessarily, if anything should happen to you and you cannot afford it, right? Like, there's a lot of layoffs happening right now. You always want to make sure that the rents in the area, worst case scenario, can always cover you so that should anything happen, you can weather any storm, right? And so cash flow always saves the day. But the beauty of real estate is appreciation and the leverage that you have, that you can leverage a bank, you can leverage things to be able to gain more appreciation and more return on your money based upon the down payment that you made. So.
Okay, so let's talk about analysis, because that wasn't one of the questions I had in my mind, but let's break down analysis, right? Because when people say, the first thing you hear all the time, which you did mention earlier, but I want you to put a little bit more on it so people really understand. If you can afford your rent, you can afford your mortgage. I'm not advising that that's necessarily true unless you really look at the other things. When I bought this house, I can afford a mortgage, right? But there's a lot of things as a first-time home buyer that I didn't think about. And lucky enough, I can cash flow it. Whew, my mom taught me to live below my means.
Yeah.
So I didn't base it on both of our salaries. I based it on one of our salaries. So in case anything happened, at least I had the foresight to do that. But I mean, there's other things besides the mortgage. There's a lot of other things break.
Absolutely.
I call it the American debt. It's beautiful. I have my home. I love it. But it takes a lot to maintain and upkeep this baby without nothing coming in, of course.
Yeah, absolutely. So outside of your principal, interest, taxes, insurance, right? People need to keep in mind taxes and insurance are always going to increase, right? So rents increase. So we know we're going to get a little bit of rental increase, and maybe that will keep up with the principal. But if you're in a state where, especially like a Texas or a Florida, insurance can go gangbusters based upon what incidents are happening. And then taxes, depending on the type of state. So when you're looking at investments and you're looking at which states to do business, you want to take those types of factors into. So why I love Arizona, taxes are pretty cheap. They don't increase. They can only increase. They're capped every year. It can only go up so much. And then insurance is pretty low. We don't have that many incidents. So I love this state from an investment standpoint. North Carolina is another state that I like. Alabama, right? You also want to think about, landlord friendliness. That's another thing that's like, okay, if this particular, renter stops paying, am I in a state where they can just go, they can camp out like a New York, California? They can camp out and not pay for like a good year. Do I have the reserve to be able to weather that? Ensure that you have those screening criteria set up front so that you have the right candidates coming into that property, right? So a lot of people make the mistake of just trying to get a warm body in their properties, and they're not doing the proper screening to get the right people in. So outside, and we'll go back to the operating expenses, the principal, interest, taxes, insurance, but there's going to be maintenance. So certain repairs and maintenance. And so depending on the age, so if you're in a new property, like when I first started out, I was just buying new builds, right? I was buying new builds in an area that was growing, right? So it was a completely new town, and I was just kind of banking on that fact that area was growing. And so it was just, the appreciation was beautiful. So I didn't have to really worry so much about high repairs and maintenance. But if you're in a home that's like 1920s, 1960s, depending on the state, right? 80s is old out here, right? Arizona is not, most of our properties are like 80s or newer, right? So, if you're in something 60s, 70s, okay. Well,
that's Connecticut, old.
Yeah, exactly. That's probably young. So you're thinking about all the big ticket items, the roof, the plumbing, the electric, when was the last updated, and just carving out a certain percentage of the rent to say, you know what, I'm going to carve out, 5% of these rents to just stick away, right? We're not going to use it. We're going to put it in reserve for those in case things happen, right? The plumbing back, the toilet overflow, the little things, right? So it's good to have kind of a capital reserve just because you just don't, especially for things when you're doing an inspection on a home. Okay, I know this roof is about 10 years old. We got about 5 or so years left of it. So in about 5 to 10 years, we're going to have to replace it. So you're keeping that in the background. That's something that you want to. So a lot of people make a mistake on the capital reserve side. They don't put enough away that side of the house. And that's just good to have. It's just the just in case money. Just like, they tell you to have 3 to 6 months of your expenses for your own living and for your own budget, right? Emergency savings. Think about that as well for an investment property. You just want to have that in case money, in case those big ticket items, especially once you've already assessed the property when you're purchasing it, you already know what those things are. You might be like, okay, well, I'm going to peanut butter it until I can, right? So sometimes you may have to do that, and you're making the right calls, but
Yeah.
at some point, you're going to
Yeah.
have to replace it.
Boiled dumpling and butter. That's all it got to be. So you mentioned, in different states. Well, I would hope that if it's the first investment in the state that you're in, you actually do in that state. But if you're looking to do in other state, what should investor consider when looking to invest in properties in state different from theirs? You talk about the weather, insurance, anything else they should look at? Because you mentioned those
So
specific
definitely
things.
is a landlord-friendly state. We talked about that. The taxes in that state, what the tax structure, everybody's tax property tax. When I say taxes, property taxes, insurance. What does that look like within that state? Another thing to consider if you want to have boots on the ground in another state. Like I can't speak to that highly enough. When I started, the first two homes I bought in Arizona, second two homes I bought in Louisiana. Louisiana is very much so a cash flow state. It's not, you don't have like crazy wild appreciation swings where like you have in Arizona. Arizona has very good appreciation. You kind of get a good mix of cash flow and appreciation in Arizona. In Louisiana, it's very steady. You're not seeing homes grow at large percentages from an appreciation standpoint, but the properties cash flow well because you have low price points. So that's good sometimes for people who are like, hey, I don't have enough money to buy in my own state. Like if you're in California or New York, I want to go to a state where I can afford to purchase that home for payment. But you want to make sure you have boots on the ground because contractors will absolutely take advantage of you if you're doing up or you're fixing up properties. They will send you pictures and make you think that everything is good and it's not. So it's good to choose a state. And there's some people are like, well, when we're analyzing markets, what markets do we decide to choose? Start with states that you already know people in, that you maybe got family members in, you got good friends in, that can swing by, check on things for you if they need to, at the minimum, I would say, right? Maybe they're not going to be transacting the activity, but they can be your ears and your eyes on the ground. You absolutely need a trusted person there. And then, the more you want a trusted contractor, you want a trusted property manager. And so even when I look at different states, I'm looking for referrals to these people, right? Because usually when you find one, you can find the others, right? So if I find a good property manager, well, guess what? They're connected to great contractors, right? If I find a good contractor, okay, hey, who do you know, right? So, and even if you find, particularly meetup groups or investment groups within that area where you can get those referrals from, right? You have to be there enough to build some relationships to get good. And even if in my own state, there's contractors I've had to, you kind of have to have a deck. Like, okay, this is the number one man, this is number two, this is number three. Sometimes your bench gets short because you're just like, man, I wiped through everybody. These guys are shady, they did a great job the first time, and then they did shoddy work the second time. So you really got to have that. Once again, things are going to happen. You have to be able to be flexible, weather any storm. But having that boots on the ground is so critically important.
Sorry about that. Okay. So what methods have you used to secure funding for your investment? Like what advice do you give entrepreneurs looking to obtain capital in this area?
No, that's good. I would say, and so I actually did a kind of talk on this a little bit. First, just leverage what's in your hands. Like I didn't have a ton of capital when I first started. I didn't have access. I started with the FHA. Like if you don't have a lot of money down, like you should be figuring out what hustle you can do to stack as much cash as possible. If your hustle is your job, then figure out how you can save, 20% of your income, a good percentage of your income just to get the ball rolling. Because once you get an asset, you can leverage your assets to be able to use cash from that. But you got to have something to kind of get started. So say, hey, no money down. Well, no money down comes at a cost, right? Because even if you're doing an FHA and you only put 3% down, or you're doing kind of a low money down solution, that means you're leveraging the bank at a high. So cash flow is going to be light, right? So the more you leverage your bank, the less your cash flow is going to be. The more you're able to put down, the greater cash flow. So it just depends on what you're looking for. If you know you're in a market has the potential of appreciation, because we're really banking on like, hey, we see development coming this way, we see things kind of heading in this direction. You're banking on this future appreciation. Once again, we talk about the buy right? Make sure that whatever you get yourself into, the rents in the area can cover it, right? With some buffer room, right? Because you want to be able to, should anything happen, I can weather the storm. But some people will bank on the appreciation. They'll say, hey, I want to put as little money down. And if I can get this appreciation swing, then I might have 100K in my property 2 years from now that I can now take that 100K, leverage it, whether it's through an equity line of credit or if it's through a cash out solution, then I can utilize that to be able to pour into another property. So that's one strategy that people might use. Some people might flip to be able to gain some cash flow. So if you have that sort of relationship with wholesalers who can find you undervalued properties, which is sometimes hard to find, I wouldn't start as a new person. I wouldn't necessarily start with flipping unless you know somebody who's already in the game and you're kind of going to be like a money partner to them. Say, hey, I'll give you some money and we'll do this together, blah, blah, blah. And you're kind of learning underneath them. Because if you do the numbers wrong in the flip space, now you're stuck holding something, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, a lot of people will use hard money and all that stuff, but they've got to bake in the holding cost, right? The cost of hard money is very high, right? And hard money is just like a loan shark for those people who don't know. That's what I say.
I was going to ask you that question. I was waiting for you to finish. I'm like, what is hard money?
Yeah,
but thank you for answering that.
It's essentially not the bank. It's private money. These are private investors, who say, hey, you can't get money from a bank, or you need to move too fast to get money from a bank. So we're going to give you a loan, but we're going to give you a loan for a short period, like maybe 6 to 12 months. And we're going to give it to you at a high rate, like 12%, right? 11%, 10 to 14%, somewhere in that space, right? And it may be worth it to you to take it because the opportunity is so great that if you can flip this thing in 3 months, you're going to make 100. Okay, maybe I paid, $5,000 or 10 grand in, fees from borrowing this money, but it's worth it because I made 90 grand or I made 30 grand, right? So it's that's a little scarier. Right?
Yeah, because when you say that, Tari, you know what I'm hearing? I'm seeing those movies that I watch. I'm an action flick girl. I see those movies where they come after you and break your hands and threaten your family. And
yeah, they do that, but they will take that property from you. They'll be like, so yeah, you're not quite doing what you said you would do. So how about we're going to foreclose on this property? We're going to take it back. And you still owe us the money. So that's usually,
oh my gosh,
they have the right to foreclose on you and pretty much take the property. So they're always going to, these private money people, they're not going to, they know that you have that property, number one, is valued at more, right? So they're also managing their risk as well if they approve you. So I've done it, and I've used it just to say I had the funds. So I'll do like a little pump fake, use a hard money kind of guarantee to get in the door, and then do traditional financing on the back end. There's so many strategies. Once you've learned stuff, I will tell you this, there's nothing new under the sun. A lot of things that you see like, oh, this is a new strategy. It's like, no, it's not really new. It's just respun, right? And so once you learn, okay, these are the strategies to pull in different spaces. Like, oh, in low interest rate spaces, okay, I can do these things. In high interest rate spaces, seller financing is really big, right? So it's like, hey, if I can negotiate a deal with the seller, they can carry the mortgage. So that's right now, seller financing is popular because our interest rates are high, sellers can't sell. So it's a win-win, right? So it just really depends on, I know I may have gone way off target of the question you asked, but
it's very informative. So I'm listening. I'm listening.
Many ways, I just tell people, you start with, if you've got nothing to offer, like you don't have the capital, then you're gonna have to sweat a little bit for your capital, right? You're gonna have to hustle, you're gonna do stuff. Leverage, I tell people leverage what's in your hands, because people take for granted what's in their hands. Okay, what is it that skill you can sell or whatever, right? Then once you have assets, right, now you can leverage your assets to do more. You can leverage your 401k, you can leverage your equity in your homes, you can leverage life insurance. There's so many things you can leverage. So you always want to do the analysis. I go back to that because anytime you leverage something, every time you leverage an asset, there's a cost to it, right? So you've got to say, okay, is this investment worth the cost of me pulling on this, right? So I've used my 401ks. I've used a 401k loan, right, to buy a property, pay myself back, right? And then now I own this asset.
But Tari, you had a plan. You had a plan. You're not just out there doing it. You ran the numbers. You have a plan, and you did not put your family financial health at risk.
Right.
That's the difference.
Yeah.
You have to make sure that you're looking at this stuff. Absolutely. You're really looking at this stuff.
You cannot be just like, oh, I heard someone say I could do this and do it. No, you got to run the numbers. So I always say that. Got to run the numbers, manage the risk, and if your risk threshold is low. Like some people are like, well, I'm okay paying. I'm okay if my cash flow is not there because I know I can make. Okay, that's a gamble that you just need to go going in. That's a gamble you're taking. Be very aware that that's the gamble you're taking. So people just need to understand their risk threshold. Everybody's risk threshold is different. But for me, I'm always going to make sure it cash flows. I'm not taking that risk.
So
around long enough. So.
Been there, done that. So what are the essential tools and resources needed? So we talk about, having that cash flow, talk about managing your risk and knowing the numbers. Like, what other essential tools and resources are needed to run a successful real estate investment business?
Yeah, I mean, I would tell people don't get so caught up in being perfect. Right? Because you can people will analysis paralysis and shut themselves down. So do everything you can to do in your power to have all the pieces in place until it's like, okay, I got to move, right? I got to move forward. I have enough. I've done enough numbers to get me about 60, 70% of the way there. Then at some point, you're going to have to take a leap of faith. So I'll start with that.
Okay.
I definitely believe you should have a team, right? When I say team, it doesn't need to be like a team or a group of investors that are doing it with you, but who's your contractor? Who's your mortgage person, right? When you're thinking about, okay, what debt or what source of funding am I going to use? I want to have a mortgage broker. I want to have a bank. I want to have relationships with many different people so that I know, okay, if this one doesn't come through, I can go to this one. And so maybe that's a credit union. Maybe that's, have different, a bank is going to give you different numbers than a mortgage broker, right? Because they're going to be talking to agency lenders like your Fannie Mae's, your Freddie Mac's. And so there's going to be certain requirements for that versus different requirements that a bank will require because they make up their own rules and their own terms. They're not backed on the mortgage is backed on Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac. So you want to be able to, there's differences between that. So having those resources to pull, the more you have those resources, the better it is. if it's something that you're going to have to fix up, it's not a new property, you definitely want to have those contractors already on deck. If it's something that you're not going to manage, meaning you're not personally going to property manage that property, you should already be thinking about, so always be thinking ahead. You should always be thinking about, okay, who in this area, especially if it's out of state, who in this area can manage these type of properties? Already be vetting them before you get the property. This is the type of properties I wanna start taking down. This is kind of my buy box, right? When I say buy box, this is like, it's got to be a 3-bed, 2-bath. It can be no more than $400,000. It has to cash this flow this much. You know, you kind of have like your criteria, right? You're communicating that to your broker. You're communicating that to your property manager. You're communicating that to people in your community. So they're looking out for you, right? Closed mouths don't get fed. You got to articulate what you want, right? And then be building that team. And so the more you can get out there and just start join meetups. I mean, there's online meetups in certain states. There's, you know, however you can build relationships. The more consistent you are, it'll come, you know?
So do you invest in long-term or short-term, or do you do both?
I do a little bit of everything.
Do a little bit of both?
Yeah,
all right.
It's on multi-commercial real estate.
Multicultural, yeah.
I don't really do short-term. I never really did like the week stay, 3-day stay. I've never been that. I'm more midterm, long-term. So traditional renting, or your midterm stays, like 3-month stays. Probably the shortest term I've done is like probably 30 days. Or I've also rented by room. So people renting out rooms in a home. And so you're maximizing the rent you can get by renting out the whole property by room individually. So it's kind of like almost like house hacking a little bit, because you're renting out each room. You could live in one and rent out the rest, or you could, you know, there's so many different ways, right?
You gotta change your mindset with that. As a Jamaican, I'm like, I don't know about no space. I don't want nobody in them space. Yeah. But that's the kind of person you are, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I left college. I am not sharing bathrooms anymore. You know? But my kids, I'm like, please stay in your bathroom. Don't come to my bathroom.
That's real. But you know what? I am one of those individuals. I do whatever it takes. And so some people are like, well, how did you get to where you get to? Because I've done whatever it takes to go, right?
Legally. Okay, she did it legally.
Yeah, legally.
No.
But,
no, I understand, but you have to change that mindset. And if we're going to hustle, I have to get out of that thing. You know, you're Jamaican as well. You know how we're taught, right? You know how we grew up. So I have to get past that. Like, okay, I did it in college as a grown woman. I don't know if I'm, you know, but I won't be living there. But I like the rent of the room idea though. But when you say team, you also have a bookkeeper, an accountant. You have all those people in your team, right?
Thank you for that. Yeah, even the accountant. The accountant is critically important as far as like avoiding tax. When you're just getting started, you may not care as much, but like once I started getting like, okay, this is my thing, real estate's my thing. Once I started acquiring enough properties, I think it was like probably 2009, 8, 9 period where I was like, I got to get an accountant who knows really, right? It's a really specific accountant, because I have enough properties now where I need to be understanding how I'm avoiding these taxes, right? And can help me. And now they have what they call tax strategists, who are like for those really high income earners and people who are really doing a lot of investments to really set up the strategy. And you want to be talking to your accountant way before tax time comes, so that they can tell you, oh, you know,
weekly, daily, they're your friend.
You might annoy them if it's that much, but at least touching base with them 2 or 3 times a year to say, okay, here's my game plan for the year, right? Like I already know my game plan. I want to sell an asset. I want to repurpose it. I want to roll it in. Okay, based upon what I think I'm going to make, right? Here's where the income I think I'm going to be. Here's if I sell it, here's what it's worth. Here's what, you know, I have to offset this amount. You got to run those scenarios past them so they can say, okay, well, I don't recommend you, or you know what, here's what you can do to offset that. You have to put the gains into something. You have to put about this much money in buying other assets and whatever. So they're going to tell you and strategize with you kind of what you need to do to be able to offset the taxes. Mm-hmm.
So did you, thank you. Sorry about that.
No.
Do you do it under your name or under LLC? Like, from when you started to now, is everything under company or is it still some
When I first
personal?
started, it was in my name. Now they're under LLCs. And you can quit claim deed because, your LLCs don't have any credit. So technically you're buying under your name when you first start out because your LLCs don't have any credit. So you have to build that up, right? Till your LLCs then can purchase their own thing. They're making enough cash flow. That's
Mhm.
something that you can provide to a bank, right? And then there's also what they call debt service coverage ratio loans where you are qualifying, the income is qualifying the loan. So it's not based
Mm,
on credit. It's not based on, so they're called debt service coverage ratio. So essentially they want to make sure that the cash flow of that property is going to cover 1.25% of the debt. That's usually the number that banks are looking for.
mhm.
And so, yeah, so once you start getting to the space where you have assets and they see, okay, well, you're picking up properties and they want to make sure that the cash flow or the income from this property covers the debt by a certain amount over the debt,
Mm,
right? It's a good number. The same number the banks use is the same number you should also use to say, hey, is this cash flow doing 1.25 what the debt is, right? If not, maybe I should be, considering not doing it because a bank wouldn't do it, right? So,
yeah.
mhm.
You said LLCs. Does that mean you have multiple do you have an LLC for each property or you have multiple
No, I
under?
group it. So you want, you're going to hear many different theories on this.
Mhm.
Some people have one LLC for each and every property, but that's a handful, right?
Mm,
Management standpoint, you got to have a bank for everyone, you got an EIN for everyone. So really, some people will group it based upon the threshold. So your risk threshold. So I'm willing to have, because if somebody comes against you or tries to sue you or whatever, right? You want whatever that threshold, you don't want to have so many properties they can come after everything under that LLC. So that's the purpose of kind of separating it. But you can also have kind of an umbrella policy as well to cover you across properties as well. But I'm a believer in having LLCs, and if you can have an umbrella policy, even better. It's kind of like an Airbnb type of thing if you think about it, where they're like, oh, we'll cover a certain amount of damage or whatever. It's liability coverage.
so umbrella policy is an insurance policy that you call and get extra coverage on your properties
Rentals, yeah.
above a certain amount. Yeah.
Mhm.
So you have multiple LLC, but you have a group of homes under each LLC
Yeah,
based
up
on
to the
your
threshold of what you want, right? So
up to the
everybody's
threshold.
is going to be different based upon what they're willing to lose, essentially.
So umbrella policy covers everything, or you have to get different umbrella policy for each of those
So it should cover everything. You just
to cover everything.
kind of dictate. You got to tell the insurance company how you kind of want to.
Okay. And obviously that's worth it because you're sharing the risk. Insurance, you share the risk, okay? You don't want to
Just
absorb
keep
all
in
that
mind,
risk. So
insurance companies are never trying to pay out. That's the key. But yeah, it's one of those things you don't want to, you paying out, but you don't want to not have it. It's just
hmm
those things, right?
yeah, you need it. You kind of need it.
It's one of those things.
So
All the
how
things we talked about. So the team can be really deep, but there's gonna be certain key players that you're gonna want. Certain key players that you're gonna want. Accountant is definitely one of them. It's up there.
and lawyer, I'm assuming. Um
You can get
so
away with that without, once you start getting deep, you can pay a lawyer as you need it.
okay.
If you're not like deep in real estate, then pay a lawyer as you need it.
Okay, nothing on you don't need one on retainer right now.
Right.
So how has achieving financial freedom through real estate investing like changed your life? Everything about it. How is
Yeah,
how is
how's it
that?
changed my life? It's so funny. I don't know how it's changed my life. It's the financial freedom, right? Like I could walk away from a job and know that I have properties that are income producing for me, and I don't, have to think about what's going to happen if I get laid off, right? So it's an extra layer of protection. Somebody called it, what did somebody call it the other day? It's kind of like you're job neutral. Like if I want to work, I can work. If I don't want to work, I don't have to work. I'm still building, a lot of people are like, man, where you're at is phenomenal. Like I make enough cash flow from my properties to have a salary, right? Like a high 5-figure salary. But to me, I'm not quite where I want to be, right? So I still have, some other goals that I have in mind. And I still want to work, right? So I think it's knowing what brings you joy, right? Being able to choose the things that I want to, that I'm passionate about, that I want to be able to pour into. I have the ability to take more of those risks than if I was just solely dependent on my job. So that's kind of the freedom that real estate has given me. I'm still very active. I have now passive strategies that I use where I can invest my money with certain individuals and let it work for me, but I'm still very active. So I tell people I don't want to be a hustler no more. Because
I'm a hustler, baby. I'm a hustler.
Yeah, I seriously, the song. I don't want to be a hustler. That's how. I don't want to be a player. I don't want to be a hustler no more. And I'm so used to that because as a kid, I'm Jamaican, so it's just part of my DNA.
It's part of your DNA.
Part of my DNA. But now it's like I just want to really work hard at the things I love. I don't want to do all the things. So as I think about what does 5 years look like from now, 10 years, do I want to be doing all the things? So now I'm really starting to scale it back. I want to focus on those things that bring me joy, those things that I love. Like I love strategy. I love strategizing a deal, putting the pieces together, but I don't like to do the minutia work, right? So if I can hire someone to do that, that's what I want to set myself up for, right?
But Tari, I thought the investment was the business. What other job do you have? Isn't it the investment piece? You have a job like a 9 to 5?
No, this is it.
Oh. Okay, you said
be active in real estate. Like,
okay.
You still are working it, right? By the way, I consult on the side. So I do that maybe 10 hours or so a week. But
okay, then break it down for me. I misunderstand. When you say working it, what do you mean?
If you're working, real estate is not, unless you have a property manager or you invest money, you're still actively working real estate. I'm still actively in the business of real estate. I mentor people. I have so I have a program where I'm still actively.
So this is your job. This is your full-time thing.
Yeah,
okay.
I'm
I thought you were
an investor, right? So when I say I want to just be able to, really have the freedom, right? I still feel like I'm still married to the real estate. There's still another threshold that I want to get to before I'm like, and I don't even think I could ever really just like, okay, So it's
there
a choice, right? You have the choice to say, yeah, I don't have to for the next couple of months. I'm gonna go do what I want to do, and if I come back to it, then I can come back to it. But yeah.
Okay. So let's talk numbers. This is Island Money.
Yeah.
All right. So let's talk numbers.
Sure.
What is that big number for you? Do you have a number that you're aspiring to in terms of assets, or break that down for me?
From a cash flow standpoint, net cash flow, I want to be at about 250.
Okay.
Yeah.
Not 250,000. Is that million or billion?
Oh, no. Cash flow. So 200 coming off of my properties, 250 coming off of my properties, where it's just cash flowing that. So
each property?
No,
or just in total?
Property, total.
Okay.
Total. So that's the income. So if you say net, after debt, taxes, insurance, all the, expenses, operating expenses, I'm cash flowing that amount.
Okay.
I'm a ways away from that. I'm probably at about 100. Under 100, right? 75 to 100 space as I continue to. So part of that strategy will be to pay down those homes. If I own those homes with no debt, I could easily be there, right? So part of my strategy will be to, hey, as I purchase new properties, I gain appreciation, take the appreciation, pay off properties, right? That's one. Purchase something, you find it for a low. If it cash flows well, take the cash flow, dump it, pay off the assets that you want to keep. So I know what assets I want to keep, and I know what assets that I want to sell. I have it for a time period, right? So maybe I want to hold it for, I'm always looking for properties that are in the pathway of regentrification or in the pathway of development. So I'm banking usually on the appreciation of a market as well as cash flow. So if I cash flow light, then I'm banking on the appreciation. Hey, this market development's coming with drop, growth is coming this way. There's a lot of companies moving to this area. This market is going to naturally appreciate. So I'm looking 3 to 5 years out, and I'm going to say, okay, in 5 years, we'll take that cash, the appreciation from that market, and we'll repurpose it. Either we'll sell it to be able to pour into another property to pay it down, or we're going to take that cash flow to pay off these assets, right?
So I think how many assets do you have roughly now? Like one something?
So if it's just the personal single family homes and the small multifamily homes, I have about 12 units. So
Okay.
if we're talking about multifamily properties, commercial assets that I'm partnered in, it's about 800 that doors.
Okay.
So I'm talking specifically what I actually own 100%. I have assets
Okay.
that I own with other people.
Mm-hmm.
Once again, even those passive deals that I'm invested in, we're going to take the what we appreciate from those properties.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to dump them in. We're either going to take those assets and recircle them into other properties. The goal is you're either gaining from an equity standpoint, right? So from a net worth, right? The more assets you have, the more equity you have, the more net worth you have. So when people say, hey, Jay-Z's worth $1 billion, $2 billion, $3, $4 billion. Well, he doesn't actually have that in the bank. Right?
I know.
His assets, his businesses, right? But when you see market fluctuation like right now, right? He could be worth $3 billion today, and he could be worth $1 billion tomorrow, based upon the value of where your equity goes, right? But say like stock market, right? We see like Elon Musk, his net worth wiped out quite a bit.
It's a great time to buy a Tesla,
right? So
it's a great time.
That's really what it. Now the beauty of real estate is, for the most part, real estate's going up. Does it have its rough spots? Absolutely. But for the most part, people have to live. They will always have to live. So you're always trying to buy in the right markets, right? In order to make sure that, hey, it's going to go up, right? In general, even if my property appreciated 3% year over year, when you buy a house, you're not buying, I'm buying a $300,000 house. I'm putting 10, 20% down. So I put a fraction of the cost down on an asset that appreciates 3% year over year over year. Let's just use that as a modest example. That's modest, right? Like in Arizona, we could see 20%.
Wow.
See crazy, right? Like we could see wild swings, right? So let's just say it's modestly 3%. Well, if you put 3% down with a 3% appreciation over the total asset, which that's what happens, then you can see a 15%, 20% appreciation on your money year over year, right? And so that's kind of the beauty of real estate, is that you're leveraging that, and then you're getting the tax write-off, right? Because the government incentivizes business owners and investors, right? It's not incentivizes real estate investors because they put people in homes, and people need homes, and they incentivize business owners for giving them jobs, right? So when if you read Rich Dad Poor Dad, your goal is to get over to a certain side of the quadrant where you're a business owner or you're an investor, because you're providing something to the economy, and the government incentivizes you to do that. By the way, it doesn't only incentivize you in the US, it incentivizes you in whatever country you're in, right?
That's good. Hear that? So, question for you. What was it like when you realized I'm a millionaire, or I got money like that? Like, what was that feeling for you? Did you even realize it? Or do you even because I know people who don't even acknowledge it. Which part are you?
I'm probably one of those. Because when I was young, I was in my 20s, I was very ambitious, right? And then the Great Recession happened. That humbled me real fast. Right? So it was like, whoa, I'm on a roll. I'm about to kill it. I'm about to hit millionaire status by 30. And then it wasn't, and God humbled me, and I'm appreciative for that because I probably would have been a very different individual had I not been humbled. But yeah, no, it's funny because until I had to calculate it, it was like, oh, I'm actually there, right? But I don't, I don't inflate my expenses to what I make. So I live very humbly. So most people would not think I'm a millionaire, right? Because I live very humbly. And that's part due to my mom. Just is she doesn't really, she's a giver, right? So she always taught, like, even now, like the things that she has, I'm handling my family's assets and things like that. She's just like, Tari, like, I'm not taking it with me, right? Like, it's going to you guys. So you help me determine what to do with it. And so I have that in the back of my mind too, especially since COVID and everything's like, death is imminent. Yeah, at some point, we're all leaving this earth. And so what do I really want to do with my life? What is it, the impact that I really want to leave in this earth? God's placed me here for a reason. So, what do I want to do with it? And so as those things and God lays those things on my heart, those are the things that really matter at the end of the day. Do I want to take all the trips that I want? Do I want to enjoy my life? Absolutely. Right. I believe you can do both, and I think
Yeah.
see people like the Bill Gates of the world and the Warren Buffetts, as they make more money, they realize, what is this, right? Like, I want more purpose. Money's not happy, right? Like, people, can it buy you things? Absolutely. But, the quality of relationships, like now for me, it's like, okay, rest and spending time with quality people. Sometimes that's your family, sometimes it's not.
Okay. Let's get into that because I know I'm going to respect your time. But let's talk about that, right? Are your family like impressed with what you're doing, and how did you get here? Because I want to know your migration story before we run out. I really want to get that in. And is your family impressed with everything that you're doing?
5 minutes. So
yes,
are people? Is my family impressed? Maybe secretly they're impressed. Nobody, like my mom.
You gotta stop this.
Right, that part. No, my mom tells me she's proud of me. Like, my mom definitely. I am my mom's child. Like, I literally am. We look alike. I literally got her personality too. So there's things I'm doing now. She's like, oh, I wish I could have done that. But this, or, this, whatever she makes, tells me. So she's proud of me, but at the same time, she's very nervous too. So she's always like, okay, Tari, like, when I left my job, she was like, oh no, Tari, get the job. No, she wants to like talk me out of it, like, be safe, because she only did so much, but she did a lot with her money. You know what I mean? Like, she was very wise with what she did. She gave us all opportunities. She made sure we were all set education standpoint. So, and then, when I see what my grandmother did and what my family did to get them to the States, right? Like, to get my mom over here and to get, so for us, family is big. Like, I had 1 million cousins come through my family, come through my house, to be able to just get to the States. And so we don't take really opportunities for granted. And, so I think I live very humbly. I don't, only because now I'm somewhat in this influence space that I have to talk about it more. It's very uncomfortable. It's very uncomfortable.
I know. That's why I asked you. I knew it would be. I'm like, tell them you're a millionaire and how you made it.
It's hard to say it, but I am, right? Like, but it's not something I'm, telling my family, and, so
I'm a multimillionaire.
My immediate family tells me they're proud of me. I know my brother, sister, we're all really close. I'm sure my cousins and stuff I've always been a hustler. I mean, like, since I was a kid, I had candy business and all sorts of business, through parties. And so people always have deemed me that family member, right? But so it's always, that has kind of been a consistent thread, but, did I know I would be here? Not really, but I'm gracious. I'm gracious and I'm grateful.
I'm glad. Yeah. I'm glad you're blessed. So something I ask all my guests, what is one saying or proverb that your family use to provide guidance in your life?
One saying.
or proverb. And you're Jamaican, deep Jamaican, so you better have something.
Right, Jesus. It probably stuck my mind. Oh man, that's a good one. Oh, my mom just always says, leave it to the Lord. You know what I mean? Like, trust God. Pray about it, Tari. Pray about it. Take it to God. You know, she's a big believer. Part of the reason why I'm probably my faith level is where it is at. There's many reasons why it is, but I do take everything to prayer, take everything to God. Like, if he ain't leading it, I don't want to be in it. That's really, if he ain't leading it, I don't want to be in it. I've seen what my own strength can do, and it doesn't lead me to any good. So I'm very much so acknowledging there's powers greater than me, and I want to be in alignment with that. So, you know, I'm gracious for everything that I have and everything that I get. And yeah, that's yeah.
Well, thank you so much for stopping by this studio here at Alec Money 365. I am so glad they're able to share some knowledge with us, especially me. I was taking notes. Over here taking notes. And I'll always reach out. But taking that first step is like, woo! You know, taking that money to your savings account and say, I'm going to invest in myself.
Hardest part is just starting.
Like, you know, well, it's not doing it much over there, so might as well invest it in something. But, you know, thank you for being here and blessing us with the present and sharing that information with us and the community. Until next time, remember, keep your money irate.